When we think about what literature is, we often jump straight to stories and characters. But Indian Poetics offers us this incredibly profound and different way of looking at it, not as a collection of individual works, but as a deeply interconnected system, a whole philosophy of aesthetics. It's a tradition where art is a meticulous craft, and in this explainer, we're going to dive into how that craft really works.
So let's start with a huge question, one that thinkers have been wrestling with for centuries. Why do we have poetry? Is it to teach us something, to entertain us, or just to hold a mirror up to the world? Well, the Indian literary tradition has a really compelling answer, and it shifts our focus away from the words on the page and squarely onto the experience of the reader.
Because at its very heart, the goal isn't just communication, it's transformation. Think of it like a kind of alchemy. The poet takes the raw, messy, chaotic stuff of human emotion and refines it into something else entirely. A universal aesthetic relish, an experience that can be savored.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we have to approach Indian Poetics as a single, unified system. We're not just going down a checklist of different theories, we're looking at a complete and cohesive philosophy of what art is and what it does.
And this right here is a foundational idea. All these different theories you might hear about, Rasa, Dhvani, Alamkāra, they aren't rival schools of thought fighting for dominance. A much better way to think of them is as interconnected lenses, right? Each one is designed to bring a different part of the artistic process into focus, but they are all aimed at the exact same thing, achieving that state of aesthetic bliss.
So, at the very center of this whole system, at the absolute heart of it, is this concept of rasa. This is the ultimate goal. It's the specific aesthetic experience that all of that poetic effort is so carefully engineered to create.
Rasa literally translates to something like taste or relish. Now, it is so important to get this distinction. This is not the raw, personal emotion we feel in our day-to-day lives. It's not your specific anger or my particular sadness. Instead, it's a transformed, contemplative version of that emotion. It's been detached from our ego, universalized, so that it can be enjoyed aesthetically by the ideal reader, the Sahrdaya.
And what's so fascinating is that rasa isn't just some vague feeling that happens by accident. It is methodically produced. There's a formula, a precise combination of components. First, you have the Vibhāva. These are the causes of the emotion, like the characters or the situation. Second, the Anubhāva. These are the physical expressions you can see, like trembling hands or a quivering lip. Third, you have the Vyabhicāri bhavas. These are the little fleeting feelings that pop up and support the main emotion, like a flicker of anxiety or a brief moment of hope. And finally, all of these work together to awaken and transform the Sthāyi Bhāva. That's the core, dormant emotion inside the reader, into the full experience of rasa.
The classic analogy here is to think of a chef, and it's absolutely perfect. A great chef doesn't just randomly throw things in a pot. They skillfully combine very specific ingredients to create a unique and memorable flavor. Well, in the exact same way, a poet masterfully combines all these emotional components, the Vibhāvas, the Anubhāvas, to evoke a specific rasa for the reader to savor.
Okay, so if rasa is the destination, the aesthetic experience we're trying to reach, how do we get there? What's the path that the poet builds for us? Well, the Indian poetic tradition says there's a primary pathway, a powerful principle known as Dhvani. And this really is the whole journey in a nutshell. You simply can't have one without the other. Dhvani is a sophisticated literary technique. It's the very path the poet builds with language, and it's designed specifically to lead the reader to that aesthetic destination of rasa.
Dhvani literally means something like resonance or suggestion. The theory here is that the true, deep power of poetry isn't in what's explicitly said, it's in what's skillfully implied. It's in the echoes and the reverberations of meaning that resonate inside the reader's mind. This is why it's so often called the very soul of poetry.
This chart makes the distinction crystal clear. Look at the left side. Rasa is the what. It's the aesthetic experience, and it happens inside the reader. Dhvani, on the other hand, is the how. It's the linguistic method of suggestion, and it lives inside the text itself. They're two sides of the exact same coin, totally inseparable.
All right, so if Dhvani is the path of suggestion, then what are the bricks and mortar? What are the actual tools a poet uses to build that path? Well, Indian Poetics gives us a whole toolkit of key linguistic theories.
So let's look at three of the most vital tools in that kit. First, we have Alamkāra. These are the figures of speech, the so-called ornaments, like metaphors and similes. But they don't just make the language pretty, they radically deepen its suggestive power.
Next up is Riti, which is all about style and diction, the specific choice and arrangement of words to create a certain feeling or tone. And finally, there's Vakrokti, or oblique speech. This is the idea that poetic language has to be different. It has to deviate from ordinary everyday speech in a creative way to really make an impact. All of these are used to help generate Dhvani.
But look, just having a great set of tools isn't enough, right? A true artist, a true craftsperson, knows how to use them all together in perfect harmony. And this brings us to the final and maybe most important layer of this system, the big principles that ensure everything is in balance.
The key principle that governs everything is Aucitya. It means propriety or appropriateness. You can almost think of it as the aesthetic conscience of the poem, the glue that holds the entire thing together. It's constantly asking, is this word, this metaphor, this character's action perfectly suited to the context and, most importantly, to the specific rasa we are trying to create?
And as this list makes really clear, Aucitya has to be everywhere. It's not just a high-level idea. It has to be applied at every single level of the work, from the choice of a single word all the way up to the overall theme. If you violate this harmony, if anything feels out of place, it weakens the poem and stops that successful evocation of rasa.
And working right alongside Aucitya is the Guna Doṣa theory. This gives us a practical way to actually achieve that harmony. It systematically identifies the gunas, which are the qualities that make a poem better, and the doshas, the defects that weaken it. It's basically the applied science of making sure everything is appropriate and in its right place.
So now let's just step back and pull all these threads together. Let's look at the truly elegant and unified vision of art that emerges from this incredible system of thought.
This is the crucial takeaway. Indian Poetics gives us a totally unified philosophy. The poet uses linguistic tools like Alamkāra to build a path of suggestion, which we call Dhvani. That path is carefully governed by principles of harmony, especially Aucitya, and the one and only purpose of that path is to guide the ideal reader to the universal aesthetic experience of rasa. It's a vision of art not as just random self-expression, but as a precise, deliberate, and profound human craft.
And that leaves us with a final question to think about. In our modern age of instant, often disposable content, what can we learn from a philosophy that sees art as a meticulous craft for generating profound, shared human experience? It's a question that is absolutely worth reflecting on.